Good morning, everybody. It's the start of a new week. It's Monday, the 21st of July. This is the Celtic Way morning briefing. Good morning to you all. My name is Ryan McGinley at the Ryan McGinley on the X handle, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Tony at Haggerty10 on the X handle. I'm used to saying your name. I'm not used to saying my Twitter handle, Tony. I'm trying to step in your shoes, and it's proven a little bit difficult. Tony, how are you doing this morning?
I'm very well, Ryan. Yourself? Still smiling after the weekend. A lot to enthuse about, and even more to enthuse about yesterday. Some possible transfer activity. It never sleeps, does it?
Yes, definitely some asterisks you would need to put next to some of these names that are getting linked with the club.
Yes.
There's always a little bit of a trepidation when two specific teams are named as being a potential suitor for a player. I always take a step back when that happens, but there seems to be potentially more in this story. Thank you to everybody that's in the comments section this morning. Good morning to you all. I think everybody's pretty positive after what happened at the weekend. I know it was only a pre-season friendly, but I think that, coupled with the fact that Celtic defeated Sporting as well earlier on in the week, has given a little bit of optimism and a feel-good factor that maybe hasn't been present in pre-season so far. Yes, a couple of signings have been really good and have lifted the support, but I think Saturday was a real breakout moment in positivity towards the start of the season. Would you agree with that, Tony?
I think it's the last two performances, Ryan, that have enthused the Celtics.
Yeah, performances as well.
So I think it was the same last year, wasn't it? Everybody was brimming with confidence and enthusing about beating Chelsea and Manchester City. So it's now the same kind of feel-good factor coursing through the club, and with the performances of some of the players. Well, they've beaten Sporting Lisbon, Portuguese champions. They've taken on Newcastle and beat them convincingly. I get pre-season friendlies. I never read too much into them, but it's always good to win them, Ryan. We know they are fitness exercises and getting players to conform to the manager's team pattern and style that he wants to play for the season, but there's a lot of positive signs in both of those matches, and then we're going to play Ajax in the Como Cup on Thursday, and here's hoping that they can produce again. But yeah, I think lots to enthuse about, lots to be positive about, and certain players are making you smile.
Without a doubt, yeah, there's plenty that we can talk about. Maybe a player that kind of went under the radar on Saturday despite scoring was that of Arne Engels, who's been receiving quite a bit of criticism online. We were speaking about that on Saturday after the game. He's because I think much like Adam Maeda, because of the price tag, he gets a lot of criticism, maybe some warranted, some not, on his performances on a game-by-game basis. People want that £11 million player to come out to play every single time, and that maybe isn't necessarily the case, 21-year-old player. But he has been speaking after the game. He was speaking to the reporters at Celtic Park after the Newcastle game, and he was talking about potential incomings for Celtic, as well as some of his teammates that he would like to stay at the club beyond the summer. Doesn't seem like a guy that wants to be rushing away anywhere anytime soon. So he was saying, we'll see who's going in and out. We never know, but the squad that is here now is fantastic. All the boys are doing really well. We have a good squad, and there will always be rumours about players coming in, going. It's up to us to keep all this inside and work on the players that are here. You see that today also that we have a lot of quality already. Everybody that came in already is really impressing us. Everybody is still settling in. Also, you see today everybody's doing well, is adapting to the system and the style of play, and also the fitness. They're also getting the fitness that we ask from each other. I'm really happy with all the guys, not just the two that are coming in and showing themselves in training. Also, not only just those two. They've been really good signings and a really good summer so far. That's what you like to hear from somebody like Arne Engels, who I think, despite numbers wise, there was a couple of people questioning his long-term fit at the club. He seems very settled at Celtic at the moment, and he wants quality players like himself to come in and really add to the team.
I want that kind of settled nature and feeling, and the quotes that you read out there. I want that to manifest itself in performances now, Ryan. I don't think he was particularly poor on Saturday. Showed again that he takes a mean penalty. He was involved in a lot of stuff maybe goes unnoticed with Arne Engels, but we know fine well there's a footballer there. We've watched it. We watched it last season. I think a lot of Celtic supporters now want him to be that dominant force in the midfield, dominate games a bit more. Don't think that's too much to ask. So I just want all of that kind of stuff that you're saying there, I want it to manifest itself in consistency, because I think there is a terrific footballer there, and he does cop a lot of flack from Celtic supporters My main issue with him is when he's good. But when he's not, he can be anonymous for large spells of football matches, Ryan, and I just want him to involve himself more. I want him to get involved both in the scoring and creating of goals if he can. Lots of people say he's better than a number 6 role, but I think he's still really to find, he's fit, as you said there. That's the word. He's fit in this Celtic team where he naturally fits in. But I think there's a natural footballer there, Ryan, and yeah. I try not to be too hard on him, but I need a wee bit more. The price tag thing for me is just, you can forget that now, because it's the player doesn't decide what is paid for him. It's the clubs that agree that. So I just want to see the footballer that I know is in Arne Engels. I want it to come out more consistently.
Yeah, I think we all do, to be honest, and we all know that there's a good player in there. And we've seen it before. We've seen it in the Champions League. We've also seen games where he's kind of flat to deceive a little bit. But as a 21-year-old midfielder, you would expect that. And now that I think that he's got a full pre-season, or he's going through a full pre-season, and he's got that under his belt, I think you'll really see the benefits of that into the new season. I was actually thinking yesterday, and I was talking to a couple of people yesterday about the midfield position. Yesterday, or the day before, on Saturday, rather, there's a lot of midfielders at Celtic at the moment. You think of the captain, Callum McGregor, who's essentially a first pick, not just because he's the skipper, but because he's a very good midfielder, and he's that deep line playmaker that also can play as a number 6. You've got Rio Hatate, you've got Arne Engels, you've got Benjamin Nygren, who's just joined the club, you've also got Paulo Bernardo and Luke McCowan. All of a sudden, Tony, it's looking like a really, really busy midfield, and there's still chat about other midfielders potentially coming in to supplement that and to add to that position. It's a really busy area, Tony, but it's what you would expect at Celtic, wouldn't you?
It's wonderful. Going to play a lot of games this season, Ryan, and I think the manager really wants to prioritise certain styles, certain formations, certain lineups, and that for me is great. I think Callum McGregor's game time will need to be monitored this season too.
Yes.
The rotation there, right? We like the look of Nygren. We spoke last week and we said if you're picking the St Mirren team today, Nygren's in that side. Who makes way? We were saying at this moment in time, it might be Engels. But it's per many 3 from 6 midfielders that you named there, Ryan, and all of them can justifiably turn it on in any given day. I like that. I love that we're well stocked in that area, and I'm greedy. I do want more players in that area. I crave a solid enforcer, a bit of steel, a bit of grit, determination, and a big presence in there. But that's just my own personal preference. That's no slight on any of the guys that play in those areas, because I think they're all excellent and technically gifted ballers, but we'll need certain players for certain games, Ryan. There is an expression in football, you've heard it many times, horses for courses.
Yeah.
And I think Brendan Rodgers is that type, and that's he's trying to bring into the team, because if we can get through the qualifiers, they're going to play a lot of games, and the competition and it's going to be ratcheted up. You're going to play a lot of big name teams, and that for me is important. It's of vital importance, Ryan.
Yeah, my question to you is, everybody talks about this enforcer that Celtic want for the Champions League. You're not the only one to say it. I say it as well. You're looking for somebody as a defensive midfielder that defends first and then maybe starts the playmaking second, but he keeps that defence nice and safe just in front of him, just in front of the defence. Do you think that, obviously you'll have, if you get into the Champions League, even if the Europa League, if Celtic don't qualify, you're hoping that they do, but if they don't, they'll come up against good teams in the Europa League. Do you think that domestically, these improvements that you're seeing from certain teams, now I'll mention the likes of Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, Rangers, that there could be more of a scope to put a defensive midfielder in for Scottish football as well? Now, Celtic have had defensive midfielders in the past. Victor Wanyama, maybe less so near Beaton, but he played there before he moved into centre-back for Champions League games, and when he played further forward in the midfield too. Johansson played there on occasion. Do you think with maybe the league improving, there could be more scope for a defensive midfielder to come into Celtic and play more games rather than just be that specialist for Champions League or European games?
We'll find out in the fullness of time, Ryan, how much these teams have improved. Yeah. But I think it's very clear from their pre-season activity that they're going to come and have a go. because I think they feel that Celtic and Rangers is, see, I use the term loosely, vulnerability, but they can be got at. And I admire that now, because, that's what you want. You want teams to come and have a go and really challenge you. And if that's the case, then fine, bring it on. But yeah, there could be scope for bringing in a defensive midfield player. As I say, you will find out in the fullness and time the strength of your opposition that you're going to play domestically. But you know fine well, in Europe, you need these kind of players. That's a given. That's straight off the bat. Because what was Celtic's problem last season in the Champions League? They conceded too many goals, right?
Off of fast breaks as well.
Yeah, right. So we watched them drag themselves back into the game against Villa after a horrendous start, and then still managed to come out in the second half and concede two. So when you're involved in games like that, you want to take a point from that or go on and win it if you can. That kind of thing, So that I think it was the nature of the goals that Celtic conceded at that level last season, Ryan. They get punished really properly by class teams for just switching off. You can get away with that in Scotland up until now. We will see if they can get away with that again next season in terms of the calibre of your opposition and see if they have improved. But I just want Celtic to be switched on all the time, Ryan, regardless of who they're playing. And if that means playing or deploying a defensive midfielder in Scotland, so be it. Because I think the Scottish Cup final showed clubs can stick to a game plan. I think a lot of the opposition took heart from the Scottish Cup final, Ryan, in terms of Celtic can be beaten. Right? Again, we go back to it. There's a kind of rewriting of the narrative about the way Aberdeen played. They weren't great, but they had a game plan. They stuck to it. They wore Celtic down, got their just desserts, right? Or you could argue they didn't, but they won it. So we can't complain with that. So you take your dumps on that one, take your medicine. But I think everybody else in Scottish football got a lift from that because it wasn't the same old with Celtic waltzing away with domestic treble. So everybody, I think, had a long, hard look at themselves in the pre-season, and Celtic say, right, how can we improve? How can we turn that into a treble again if they can, if that's the case? And how can we go into Europe and replicate what they did last season? Because everybody really enjoyed what they produced in Europe last season, but there's still plenty of scope and room for improvement, Ryan. And if that's the kind of players we're talking about, i.e. defensive midfielder with a bit of steel and a bit of height and a bit of presence, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, from midfielders who can defend to forwards that can defend as well. I think it's a good segue into speaking about Daizen Maeda. Now, Arne Engels was talking about Daizen Maeda, as was Brendan Rodgers after the game against Newcastle. Let me just bring up the quotes. Arne Engels is very keen for Daizen Maeda to stay at the club. You're not surprised about that at all because Daizen Maeda was outstanding last season. When he was posed with the question on if he wants Daizen Maeda to stay, he said hopefully he'll stay. Bit of a tongue-in-cheek suggestion, but he got that response. He's an amazing player and also really good for us and in the dressing room too. He's a lovely guy, so hopefully he will stay. We never know what is going on. He'll be fantastic for us next year and like today also. He's just an amazing person that is really helping us in every kind of aspect of the game. That's quite an interesting behind the scenes look at Daizen Maeda because everybody talks about what he's like on the pitch and how he helps his teammates both with defending and attacking. But it just shows you that despite that little bit of a language barrier, and I know that his English is getting better and he's trying his hardest to do more interviews in English, that he is getting on with his teammates. He's getting on with not just the Japanese boys that are in there, but also the foreign teammates such as Arne Engels. And I think having that relationship with a player like that is so handy because he knows how important he is to the side and to the side's success. Arne Engels is desperate for Daizen Maeda to stay. Brendan Rodgers has said there's been no new news on Daizen Maeda's contract being extended, but there have been murmurings about things happening in the background with regard to the Japanese forward that can play on the wing as well. Tony, it's a simple one, isn't it? You want Daizen Maeda to stay after last season?
I think we're all equal. Arne Engels' sentiments on that. Of course, you want Daizen Maeda to stay.
Yeah, he was a pretty good spokesperson with regards to how we feel about Daizen Maeda, I would say.
Yeah, you just echo that. I have to say that. But also, you mentioned a nice insight. It was a cracking insight. My thoughts are, we've kind of said this before, we like what he produces, Daizen Maeda, we like his interviews, but I bet he's the most popular player in that dressing room, Ryan. I've mentioned this before as well. Gordon Strachan talked about being a good teammate. I think Daizen Maeda's a good teammate. I just think he's a great guy to be around. I think he'd be very funny, and you say his English is coming on and getting better. I think like
he's a bit of a practical joker as well. I've heard Cameron Carter-Vickers last season was saying that he was involved in a lot of the practical jokes as well, which adds another layer onto him.
I think like Nakamura, he understands a lot more than he lets on. That's a fact, and he gets involved. And I just think that influence, you can't get enough of that influence in your dressing room. What Gordon Strachan talked about, being a good teammate, Greg Taylor was the same. I think Greg Taylor was a big voice in that dressing room, big personality. And I think Daizen Maeda is the same. He's a similar personality. I think players migrate towards him. Whenever anyone talks about Daizen Maeda, they always talk about his prowess on the field. But I think they're just delighted for him as a person as well, because they love him. You mentioned before about the cult hero status that he's got. He will be a player that leaves a lasting legacy at Celtic when he leaves the club, when that sad day comes. Obviously, Arne Engels is saying, please stay. I mean, he's contracted to 2027. Still another couple of years down the line, Ryan. But, I can understand why people are getting, twitchy about it. But it's between Daizen Maeda, Celtic, and his representatives. If he wants to stay, he'll stay. And if he wants to leave, he'll leave. But I tell you what, he will go with every Celtic supporter's blessings if that turns out to be the case. But you can't substitute happiness, Ryan. The man's completely happy. You can see it. You can see it in the way he plays. He gives his all. The manager said that too. His sole focus is Celtic. So it's certainly not, any kind of speculation is certainly not affecting him in any shape or form. And I think the Celtic supporters, that's all you can ask.
I think his improvement doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should. Now, I know people mention it, but I look at his lack of wastefulness on the ball. I was watching him at the weekend at Celtic Park, and he's very rarely wasteful on the ball, whereas under Ange Postecoglou, I think that he thrived on chaos a bit in Ange's side, whereas Brendan Rodgers has sort of, focused him onto not doing as many actions, maybe focusing on what he has to do well. And you can see that concentration is there, and his output is so much better than what it was. The proof is in the pudding, or in the statistics last season. That's why he did so well, because he's focusing. I think he's thinking about what he's doing now, rather than just going for it. That assist for Yang's goal for the third of the afternoon on Saturday was just intelligent play. That wasn't there from Daizen Maeda in the first couple of seasons, but it's here now, and it looks as if it's here to stay. I think Brendan Rodgers, personally, in my opinion, is the best thing to happen to Daizen Maeda's Celtic career. Although Ange Postecoglou brought him to the club, I think that he's needed somebody like Brendan Rodgers to really hone in on his abilities, hone in on his skills, iron out his weaknesses, and now you're seeing a top operator and arguably Celtic's best player at the moment.
You look at that assist on Saturday, Ryan, he made it look very easy. It's a difficult skill, but I mean, he just absolutely laid that on a plate for Yang. And also as well, I looked at a few of the Newcastle players on Saturday. They were like, somebody want to tell him this is a friendly.
I think it was Kieran Trippier that he was up against, wasn't it? And Trippier was like, I don't understand why he's playing like this in a pre-season game.
Why is he going full pelt? Tyson doesn't know any other way, but I think you're right. I think the manager has ironed out the deficiencies in his game. It's what he does. Remember, he had that chat with Matt O'Reilly. He said to Matt O'Reilly, you need to produce, you need to score more goals, you need to be a creator. Matt O'Reilly had the season of his life. He's clearly had the chat with Daizen Maeda when he asked Daizen Maeda to step up to the plate when Kyogo left. And 33 goals, 13 assists or 12 assists last season, they're brilliant numbers. And even in a pre-season friendly, he still want to create, Ryan. But he's a wee bit more deadly with his crossing now, isn't he? Some of his crossing the first couple of seasons was high, wide and handsome and wayward. Every now and again he'll hit a wayward one, but he looks more focused and drilled. And he's just saying what he's doing. And, there's a greater end product And that for me is just, that's what you need from Daizen Maeda, a greater end product. And the manager's clearly worked on that. But above all else, Daizen Maeda's clearly listened. And he's thought, right, okay. And that's why he's such a popular player, because he does what shift he puts in, Ryan, even in a pre-season friendly. And then the other night you saw the press-ups. That's not for effect. He's coming off thinking, right, I've not played 90 minutes, so I will keep myself ticking over and do my stuff. You know, it's just the way he is. And it's taken Kieran Tierney a matter of weeks to say this guy's a machine, a total machine. And how complimentary is that? And Daizen Maeda just kind of shrugs it off as if it's what I do. I come out and I play the way I do. And the Celtic supporters love him for it. His teammates love him for it. But the man who will love him most for it is his manager, because he's constantly producing for that team. And as I say, you wouldn't know that there's speculation surrounding Daizen Maeda, would you? Because he's just focused. He's just got that laser focus on playing for his team and helping his teammates, and the chips will fall where they may in terms of Daizen Maeda's contract. Is it disappointing that there's no update? Well, if there's no update, there's no update. But I'm sure they're still talking, and I'm sure something will transpire, Ryan. It has to, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think no news is good news, and he's a professional. Brendan Rodgers says he's a professional, and he'll stick to playing football, and that'll get sorted if and when it happens. I was delighted to see that Newcastle, have signed players like Anthony Elanga and Johan Visa. They're in for Brentford's striker Johan Visa, who's quite similar to Daizen Maeda in a lot of ways. Because that would just be typical of a player playing so well against Newcastle, and Newcastle have the funds to splash the cash on a player like him. So I'm delighted that they are shopping in other areas out with Celtic, which was good. A player that's been linked with Celtic. Now, I don't want to spend too long on this player because the link is a little bit dubious here and there, but Celtic have been named by the club's sporting director. The player is Kukuriki prodigy Andrej Bacanin, and their sporting director is claiming that the 18-year-old midfielder, will be leaving the Serbian club in the next 10 days. I'll just read his comments. They were translated from Serbian. These came out late last night. There was a little bit of buzz about the player. A couple of teams have been named, some more familiar than others, you would say. There is a lot of interest in our young players. This is the sporting director saying this about Bacanin. And the current focus is on the transfer of Andrej Bacanin. He attracted the attention of numerous clubs with his performances for our team last season, as well as for the Serbian national team at his age. We had calls from Scottish giants Celtic and Rangers, Ajax, Udinese, and some other teams are interested. It's possible that other options will emerge, and I expect the transfer to be completed in the next 10 days. I expect this to be another big exit transfer for Kukuriki, who would cover our club's budget, and I apologise if I have butchered any of those Serbian names. I'll need to get clued up, especially if this transfer moves forward. The reason that I'm bringing up this player is that I like to keep an eye on things that are happening, not just on Twitter, not just on Facebook, but on Instagram as well. You find that a lot of the Celtic players are very active, or Celtic targets are active on Instagram. And when they post things, even when they don't post things, they can sometimes leave little hints as to what their movements are going to be, about how they're feeling at the club, about their potential next move. So this came out last night. He's got a private Instagram account, but it said that he was following Celtic on his Instagram account. Now, I looked up Udinese, I looked up Rangers, and I looked up Ajax, and he wasn't followed to any of them. It could be something, it could be nothing, but that link, coupled with the fact that coupled with the sporting director's comments, coupled with the fact that Celtic have been named and that he is following Celtic, defensive midfielder coming from the Serbian league. Would you make of that, Tony? Would you make of this situation?
Yeah, it broke late last night. I think when you mentioned as well that Celtic and Rangers were, and from you kind of treat these things with a pinch of salt, don't you? Again, the Instagram link, people putting two and two together, we shall see. I'm just glad you mentioned the name of the team, because I was trying to refrain from calling them La Cucaracha, but they're Kukurici, I think their name is. Is that the way you say it? Could be wrong in that.
Kukuriki, I'm not sure exactly.
But yeah, 18-year-old Serbian defensive midfielder. Yeah, we shall see. Again, it's like everything else. There seems to be, whenever a Celtic transfer story breaks, it comes from the other end, doesn't it? Celtic never really make any comment about players. It's always coming from either the selling club or the media from the country that the player resides in. It's one for me that I'll monitor, Ryan.
Yep.
I'm not so much dubious or a wee bit sceptical about it, because as I say, it was only one major outlet that said it last night, wasn't it? And it was picked up by a lots of media outlets, and people started running with it.
It's been picked up this morning, and there was a couple last night in Scottish media that went with the story, but we refrained because we were questioning the validity of the source. But I did still think that it was worth chatting about. The only thing that I would say, and I would add to it all, is that we've seen this before from the likes of sporting directors and agents that like to lump Celtic and Rangers just so that they can start a bidding war for the player, so they can get the best possible price for a young player. But he's been linked. It was actually on the official club's website that Celtic were linked, so that does give it a little bit more validity than first thought.
Yeah, I think he's had a kind of stellar season, hasn't he?
18-year-old playing first team football.
And I think so they've got high hopes for him for the Serbian national team as well. So I think he ticks a lot of boxes, certainly for a club like Celtic. And if he were to come, it could be a very exciting prospect. But I'm kind of keeping a lid on it and holding the reins back a wee bit on it, because I need to find out more, and I need to see the validity of all of this. I guess when the sporting director is actually quoted on the official website, then there's a wee bit more substance to it. But we shall see, Ryan. And following Celtic on Instagram, that just sends social media into meltdown, doesn't it? Stuff like that.
Sometimes I think these players know what they're doing when they follow teams on Instagram. Sometimes it's to even push through a move to show that they're interested in joining that club, because they'll know. I mean, his Instagram account was private. He will have got several hundred follow requests last night, and the fact that he took the time to accept all of them would suggest that he maybe wants that news or wants that speculation to be known. You're getting linked with Celtic as an 18-year-old. That's probably what you would want as a young player to make that next move. It's understandable, and it's one that we'll keep an eye on. From incomings to outgoings, and to be fair, I think it affects incomings as well, because I think now that the wheels will be in motion in the wing positions, because two players look to be heading away from Celtic. Players that really probably didn't have a future, despite one of them featuring at the weekend. Marco Tilio, first of all, has been linked quite heavily both with Melbourne City and Rapid Vienna. It looks as if he'll be staying in Europe with the latter, to Rapid Vienna with a loan, with a option to buy / obligation to buy. I think the obligation kicks in once he starts 20 games for Rapid Vienna, so that could be one to keep an eye out on. They've obviously been looking to replace the winger that they lost to Nice. Is it Isaac Janssen that went to Nice that Celtic were linked with earlier on in the window? That could potentially be a good move for Tilio, staying in Europe if he wants to sort of reignite his European career rather than being comfortable in Australia and playing there. I like the fact that move could be transpiring for him. And then second of all, Luis Palma has been spotted in Poland for his season-long move to Lech Poznan. There's also an option to buy in that deal. Tony, two players that look as if they're heading out of Celtic Park. Not surprising given where they stand where they sit rather in the pecking order. But you want them to move on and hopefully do well away from Celtic.
I think you and I are higher in the pecking order than Marco Tilio and Luis Palma.
Well, he came on in the second half, Tony, and I thought he did okay when he came on.
I just think it's a question of neither player being able to be guaranteed much or any real game time for Celtic. I think Celtic done the wise thing here, and get them on a kind of obligation to buy after so many games, and then you cut your losses on both of those players. Palmer started brightly, but that initial spark and fizzle faded very quickly, didn't it? And soon realised that he was going to be a moments player, but he wasn't going to produce those moments consistently. There were few and far between. Tilio, I think some players are just suited to other styles of football. Maybe suits Australian football, or Australian soccer as they call it over there. and maybe going to Rapid Vienna, he'll have another crack at Europe, but it wouldn't surprise me if he ended back home, Ryan, at some point soon. But I think Celtic are doing the right thing. These guys just aren't going to make it at Celtic, and that's not because they're poor players. They've got ability, clearly got ability because they played for Celtic, but they're just not what Celtic need at this moment in time. And you just kind of wish them luck in resurrecting their careers elsewhere. It's no shame to say that they didn't make it at Celtic, but Brendan Rodgers is very specific on what he needs, especially in the wide areas, and he's clearly made the decision that Marco Tilio and Lewis Palmer are not what the club needs, and I'll back the manager on that 100%.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to see Tilio stay in Europe though. I like that he's backing himself and wants to try and make a name for himself in Europe. I think the big problem for Tilio was that he was injured when he joined Celtic, so he never even had that pre-season. Even if he wasn't going to be up to standard necessarily at Celtic, he never got that run in pre-season. I remember he made his debut November, December time of his first season because he'd been out for 4-5 months. That's not ideal for a player, especially a young player coming from the other side of the world into a new environment. For Palma, I think it's a good move for him. I think he could thrive in the Polish league, if I'm being honest. I think he could really be a star over there and resurrect his career, and I think that's what he needs. He's not a bad player. He was playing for Olympiacos last season. Olympiacos are a good team that make the latter stages of European competitions. It's just all about the right fit, and unfortunately at Celtic it was the wrong fit for him. So they leave, I would say, with our best wishes, and hopefully they can resurrect their careers, because you want players that have played for Celtic to go away and do well, even despite not being at the club anymore. I mean, both of them still will be contracted to Celtic, but those options to buy, you would hope that they're taken up by the respective teams, Vienna and Poznan, respectively. But yeah, I think the last thing that I want to discuss, and I mentioned that when we were talking about the wingers, the outgoing wingers means that potentially wingers would be incoming into Scotland and into Celtic. There has been talk recently about Royal Antwerp expecting Michel-Ange Balikwisha. I know he's a player that we've been mentioning, it feels like, for ages. Balikwisha, Kvistgaarden, all these same names that are linked for more than a couple of years. But it would seem that Antwerp are pretty resigned to losing their player once the right bid comes in, rather. Do you think this is now, with Tilio and Palma leaving the club, with maybe other players leaving the club on the wing, I think now is the time for Balikwisha, the deal to get sealed, and the Belgian to join Celtic?
Speaking of Belgians, I'm getting a Mark de Griezer feeling about this. Mark de Griezer was a Belgian striker that was always linked with Celtic and never ever came.
Van Bogasten.
Yeah. There's been a catalogue of them. But yeah, listen, the Balikwisha deal seems to have been ongoing for some time. If Celtic are going to conclude that, then I'd like them to go and do it now, and or else look elsewhere. Maybe they are looking elsewhere. Very good. Thank you for that. Of course, he's a gentleman. Learned everything from the old guy here. But no, I think it's just dragged on a bit, Ryan, for me, the Balikwisha deal. Don't know what the problem is, to be honest, but if he's going to come in, then he has to come in sooner rather than later, or we move on to pastures new. In terms of the other two wingers, I don't bear any Celtic player who doesn't make it at the club any ill will. Of course, you want to go and see them thrive elsewhere. As I said before, there's no shame in not making it at a club like Celtic, because the demands are so high, that winning mentality, winning culture. Some people can thrive, sink or swim, some people sink, but it doesn't mean they're bad players. And I wish them every success. If they can go and be a success at Rapid Vienna and like Poznan respectively, then good on them. But yeah, Balikwisha's one it's puzzling to me, Ryan, because we were speaking about this not long after the Scottish Cup final, weren't we? And now we're in what, July, late July or middle of July, and we're still talking about it. So if they want to pursue this and get the deal done, then it has to be quick for me. It has to be done in the next week or so. If not, then look elsewhere.
I've got to say, my slight concern is the fact that no other club are in for the player as well. As much as you don't want a bidding war for a player, I like knowing that other teams are interested in a player's services, because then you feel as if Celtic have won a watch with a player and have managed to, beat other sides to the signing. As much as you want to see players come in straight away, Yeah, I get that completely. Without any fanfare, the fact that there's not been any other teams linked, I'm sure they'll have had inquiries elsewhere, and they have been. And Overmars has said that publicly. The sporting director of Antwerp, he came out and said that there has been some inquiries, but we've not really heard of any concrete names. For me, I like players being out in the public, or names being out in the public, so that Celtic, have beaten other teams to the signature of the player.
I think that could be more to do with his injury record, though, Ryan.
Yes, I think that's my worry.
I think that's maybe why Celtic are stalling on it a bit. I just think there's could be something niggling there about his recent injury record, which is why they've been reluctant to commit. Maybe why there's been a reluctance from other sides to commit. They've maybe been asking about him and how his fitness is, and just because it's anybody who's going to lay some kind of financial outlay out on a player, they don't want them to come in and get injured immediately. And I think maybe give Celtic their due in this. They are conducting their due diligence very well, and that's fair enough. But it just seems to have dragged on for a long, long time. As you say, there's no other clubs seem to win from, but I think that could be related to the recent injury past of Balakwisha. But again, we shall see soon enough. We'll find out soon enough, won't we?
We certainly will. Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure joining you this afternoon. We've been going for 36 minutes. I realise it's a bit of a longer show, but we've spoke about everything that I've wanted to speak about, which is good. So, guys, I hope you have enjoyed the show today. If you have, please hit that subscribe button if you're on the YouTube channel. Really helps us out with our numbers that keep on going up and up. I see the numbers that are on today, 950, 960 people watching live. That's incredible. It shows that there's a hunger for this kind of this kind of content, this type of content. So if you like what we do, please press subscribe and you'll be notified, and you'll be able to join the comment section as well. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining me. Thank you, Tony, for joining me this morning, and we will see you all at the same time tomorrow. Thanks very much, guys.